What is up, HLTV Fantasy enjoyers? Another video as we have another tournament around the corner. This time it's the EU RMR for the Copenhagen Major, and it is the EU A RMRs. I'm actually going to be there myself. I'm going to be casting with Jackie, so I'm really looking forward to getting across there. I actually fly early tomorrow morning, and so I've had my eye on this one in particular because I've been trying to make sure I'm as prepared and as ready as possible and kind of know a lot of the storylines and stuff coming into this one. But just beforehand, let's talk about how we did in the previous one, which of course was the Katowice playoffs. Ended up at top 35%, which is pretty devastating because at one point I was in the top 10%, I think. And then I just kind of slipped out as Spirit continued to just destroy everybody. I had my doubts. I wasn't sure if Donk was going to be able to perform to the same very high levels as we saw in the earlier stages and as we've seen online, and I was completely wrong. If anything, he just got better. I mean, we just witnessed something truly spectacular and truly special from him. This young 17-year-old guy who's just turned 17, and he is playing probably the best Counter-Strike at the debut in Katowice that we've ever seen, and I don't think we'll ever see anything like that ever again. He eclipsed everybody's expectations, and it looked like a walk in the park for him. It was very surprising to see just how comfortable and how easy that entire process was. Against the FaZe team, by the way, that looked pretty good. One of the things I haven't heard many people talk about on this as well is that FaZe coming into the finals were actually looking in pretty solid form. The only team they'd lost to was Spirit. They lost to 2-0. One of those maps went really close. We saw Frozen really fitting in well to this roster. Additionally, Brokey was having some good performances. Rain was having some good performances. So this is a FaZe team that honestly were no slouches and were no scrubs. And probably I would say more people would have favored the experience coming into the finals to go the way of FaZe, and it just ended up not being the case. They got destroyed. I mean, the third map being what, like a 13-3, 13-4 and overpass was very surprising to me because on paper that was Spirit's weakest map, or at least one of them. So it goes to show you just how strong they were. I believe the Nents Hades was really good. Diha had a very, very poor game, unfortunately, and kind of, I think he'll be disappointed. I think realistically, the whole situation got the better of him, and he got very nervous. Hooksy didn't really do much. I mean, he was there as my budget pick anyway. I wish I'd gone for Snappy instead. And I didn't go for Spirit, as I've already mentioned, because of the basis of the costs. They were very, very expensive, but I really wish I'd at least put like a Chopper in there or a Zontix in there. Didn't happen though. So we do know what the opening matchups are going to be going into the EU RMRs. It's the same system as usual when it comes to the majors and RMRs. It's basically you need 3 wins. They're best of ones up until the playoff or relegation games, I guess you could say, or the decider matches, and then the best of 3s. So you're needing to get into that 3-0 bracket. Obviously, the teams that win the first game will play against each other. The teams that lose the first game will play against each other, and that's generally the way it's going to come down. So there's some very solid teams in this. I mean, the EU RMRs, both of them, A and B, are super, super stacked. Honestly, most of the RMRs in this tournament are very, very stacked. And so it's going to be tough to really pick which team that I'm going to go for here. But I have already picked it. Before I started this, obviously, I'm going to explain a few things coming into this one. So I've gone for Frozen and Brokey, JL from Na'Vi, Hunter from G2, and then I've got Alex, who, as you can see, I had $0 left in the budget, and Alex was the cheapest player at 169,000. So the reason I've gone for this team is because I'm trying to play it somewhat safe, right? I was trying to play the last playoff safe for Katowice, and typically the way I want to go for HLTV this season is because it's such a long season. I'm not going to try and go for necessarily the teams that I think are going to be the top percent, but the teams that are going to typically get me in that top 30 to top 20% role and just grind the points that way. But obviously there's going to be some tournaments where it's easier for me to make those Hail Mary plays than others. This wasn't one of them because I think the prices for a lot of these players are still a little bit on the steep side for a lot of them. So for example, I would love to go for, like, you know, drop down to a Carrigan, but he's 187,000. I was thinking of maybe going in for double G2, but you got this weird mixed match of prices when it comes to G2. So like Nico's 218, Monacy's 233. I'm still not completely sold on G2 and their current situation in CS2, to be completely honest with you. So I'm a little bit unsure. I was thinking of going for Hunter and Nexa, as they're both players that have had some solid moments. I mean, neither of them are going to be the heavy fraggers, the heavy carries of the team, but they've been playing better than their cost would suggest, and I still think that G2 will make it through here, although I think it might be like a 3-2 or a 3-1 job where they end up losing one of these games. Especially when it starts to get into the deciders is where I'm going to start to get a little bit more concerned about them. I think FaZe have shown us that they are still one of the best teams in the world. Yes, it's coming off the back of a lost his spirit, but that was a spirit that was just impeccable, and Donk with one of the best performances of all time that we've seen at a tournament of that stature. Na'Vi, I feel like will also get through, but because of the prices, I was going back and forth. Like, did I want to go for Bit? JL, I think, is a solid choice, though. In all honesty, he's very good, especially on that T side right now. And he was a bit cheaper, even though his performances aren't that much behind. And I went for the more sort of budget pick of Brokey, but I think FaZe are a team that's going to make it through, so it feels like it makes sense to go for Brokey when he's 212. Once he's starting to get up to like 220, that might change, but right now I still think he's cheap enough to justify the pickup. Frozen, for me, was one of the best players, obviously overshadowed in the end by how crazy Donk was. But even in that best of three, Frozen was the standout player for me. We saw hot and cold from Rain, on Mirage in particular. Rops was getting some kills here and there, but Frozen, especially on Mirage, was really trying his damnedest to get those entries, and on the CT side was trying to be like a bit of a turret. Brokey did have a bit of an off day. I have to say, he wasn't that great in the finals, but again, when you're being barraged down by a team that is just firing on all cylinders and kind of playing at their absolute peak, it's kind of hard to say otherwise, really. So this is going to be my team coming into the EU RMR A. I'm trying to play it a little bit safer. I'm going to whack on the roles now. So I think the easy ones that speak for themselves, obviously we're going to put Brokey on the AWP. I'm going to put Alex on the noob. Where is it? There it is. This is where it gets a little bit more difficult as far as I'm concerned. Like, picking between these three players with their roles. So let's have a look here. Support rounds for Frozen. It's not really what I'm going to be looking at from him. I think we're going to go for the T side on Frozen. He was very, very solid also in that finals on the T side. And throughout Katowice, I think he was very, very good at opening up sites and being sort of even an entry fragger at times. I mean, his entry round stats aren't necessarily too crazy, but he was doing a lot of work when it came to those T rounds. In terms of JL and Hunter, I think for JL we'll go with, let me have a look here. Maybe we'll go with a CT side for JL. And for Hunter, we might go for a support kind of round. And I think that's where we'll end it. We'll go through on this one. I don't really want to use many of my boosters in the first game because I feel like there's going to be a lot of Counter-Strike being played in these RMRs. There's so many teams and so many games going to get played. I'd rather get sort of a barometer of how some of these players are coming into it. So, for example, I think Nip and Eternal Fire is quite a close game. And for me to just whack on sort of like bottom fragger for Alex, I'm not sure that's necessarily a good idea. I'd rather see how things go further down the line. Because if if Nip end up beating Eternal Fire and then they go against like a FaZe or they go against like a G2 or an RV, then I think Nip are going to get slaughtered. So I'd be more comfortable putting on there if that makes sense. There's certain players and teams that I think I need to see a little bit from them. And Nip is one of those kind of teams coming into this where I want to see like, what kind of form are we going to see from Nip going up against Eternal Fire? Because I very nearly did pick up Major. He was like 184,000. I think that's very good value for money right now. But then I'd have had to have dropped one of these other players. So this team, really, what I'm trying to go for is 4 players that are going to score well for me in teams that I think are going to advance and fairly comfortably, with the exception of maybe G2, which is why I've skimped a little bit on their price. And then 1 player that I'm sure is probably going to get around 0 to negative points, but like hopefully not too many, and maybe Nip go further than people expect, and then Alex can be a bit more of a neutrality and allow Frozen, Brokey, JL and Hunter to a lesser extent to bag the points for me. But I guess we'll see what happens. Anyway, I'm excited to get out there and start these casts. It starts on the 14th, I believe. Jackie and I will be casting. I think our first games are going to be the first games of the day on the B stream, so by all means drop by and say hi to us, and yeah, really looking forward to it. I'll catch you later.